Thank you for coming out tonight. My name is Pastor Todd here, Pastor Todd Rowland at Wilson Chapel, and we're so glad that you are here tonight. We really believe you will be blessed by Rabbi Elie and his message. Mike, can you kind of go to the first slide? I just kind of want to give you a little history. Is how did we meet up with Rabbi Elie Mischel? We were in. Sorry, hon, I didn't ask for your permission on these. We were in Israel in April, and we ended up at this Jewish farmer's house, his settlement. His name is Mordecai, isn't that a good Jewish name? And then Rabbi Elie came out, and he has this book called The War Against the Bible, which I highly recommend. And so this is how we met him in Ephrat. Right? And so Ephrat, you could explain it better than I could, but it's like right across the street from Bethlehem. But you can't go to Bethlehem. All right, and I'll let you elaborate on that. But Mike, if you want to go to the next one. And so we're trying to talk him into coming to Indiana, okay? My beautiful wife here, trying to talk him into coming to southern Indiana. And then the founder of Hayoville, Tommy Waller's trying to help seal the deal as well. And so Rabbi Elie's here. So you know, when we first started talking about this, I thought, well, this is a pipe dream. This is, and a couple months later, we serve a God that, nothing's impossible. And so we're just so grateful that you're here. And friends, we will be taking an offering later. I know you might not be prepared for that, and that's fine if you're not. But he works for Israel 365. It might be easy if you wanted to write a check to Wilson Chapel, and then we could write a check to him later for some expenses. You can imagine what it takes to get. Believe me, we know it's expensive to go to Israel, and so if you've been there, you know that yourself. But so if you're led to give later in the program, we would appreciate that, and it would be a blessing to him. So, and the ministry, actually, I should say the ministry. One other thing before we turn it over to the rabbi. He has this iPad that he would like, if you would like to, it went, there we go. If you would like to join in on some current news on things that are happening in Israel, like I said, he's part of Israel365.com, is that right? And so he has this iPad you could put in your information and you'll be on the list. We get articles, 4 or 5 times a week. And Rabbi Elie, guys, you're a busy guy. I don't know how many of them you write throughout the week. But we're going to pass this along for you to fill out if you would like to. And then you'll be getting all of his information and other rabbis as well. So you don't need this. So we'll start over here. And if that interests you, just go ahead and fill it out throughout the program. And I think we're just going to start off with a word of prayer. Yeah. Father, we thank you for tonight. We thank you for bringing Rabbi Elie here safely. And Father, we just pray that in our time together that you would speak to our hearts through the word and message that you have given him to share tonight. Lord, there's a lot of curiosity you can see with all the different people here about what's happening in Israel. And so, Father, just use him to be your servant, to speak truth to us tonight, and to see how we can be praying for his ministry and for the nation of Israel, for the people of Israel, for the land. Lord, just open up our eyes to what you want us to learn tonight. And we give you all the glory for the time that we have together. In our Father's name we pray, amen. I want to turn it over to Rabbi Elie Mischel.
Wow. Thank you, Pastor Todd and Linda. It's just amazing to be here. I really wasn't sure if it was going to happen, but here we are. It's unbelievable. Southern Indiana, incredible. So, most people, they meet for the first time, maybe at church, or they meet at their job, right? I had the honor of meeting this incredible couple, right? Not at a church, not at a job, but in Judea, overlooking Bethlehem, in a place that's called the Etam Hill. Okay? This hill is where Samson slaughtered 1,000 Philistines with the jawbone of the donkey. You remember that story? Literally happened right there. That's the hill that we were standing on. And so it's just an amazing place to meet, and sometimes you meet and you feel like an immediate, soul connection. And within 3 minutes, I thought to myself that I have to spend more time with these amazing people. So, it took a few months and flying a long way, but Southern Indiana is beautiful. It was a really nice drive over here, I have to say. So really, thank you so much. I feel so welcomed, and I'm so appreciative of your hospitality individually, and also of this whole community. It's really, really amazing to be here. So, and it means especially a lot right now when so much of the world has turned away from Israel and is actively supporting the jihadists and the terrorists that perpetrated the massacre on October 7th, which was less than 2 years ago. This was not that long ago, and yet the whole world, so much of the world, seems to have turned against Israel. They've forgotten that. And so knowing that there are really good people, God-fearing people here in Indiana who are praying for us and supporting us, you should know that it means a lot. And I'm going to ask a personal favor. I gave it to Pastor Todd. There's a link, which I'll share with all of you, where you can send a letter. It takes 2 minutes online. You can write a little letter to a soldier in Israel. Right? People think soldiers and they get, we forget that they're real people. These are 19-year-old kids, like our children, my nephews, right? Like my family members are all serving now, right? And like they're kids from my neighborhood that we've lost, right? These are kids, and they're unbelievable heroes who are fighting these terrifying evil jihadists on behalf of Israel and the entire world. So you should know most of them speak English. Right? Most Israelis speak English, so if you write them a little letter, it means especially a lot coming not from a Jewish person in New York, but rather from a Christian in Indiana. And they feel like, oh my gosh, maybe we're not so alone, that people care about us, right? Because they feel so hated, right? There were just 2 soldiers that were on vacation. They finally got a break. They went to Belgium for a concert, and they were arrested. In Belgium, because you're part of a genocide or something, it's crazy, right? A couple of kids, right, who are there after a well-earned break. So to know that there are people in the world, good people in the world, who are with them and appreciate what they're doing to defend, all of us, really means a lot. So thank you, in advance for doing that. So to properly introduce myself, I'm Elie Mischel, and I am an Orthodox Jewish rabbi. Okay, I grew up here in the U.S. Until I was 40 years old. I was a synagogue rabbi in New Jersey. There are some more Jews in New Jersey than Indiana, unfortunately, because this place is beautiful. I look back and kind of regret it. Like, why did the Jews have to be in the Northeast? So much nicer down over here, even with the tornadoes. But it's really beautiful over here. But about 4 years ago, this summer, 4 years ago, my family and I, we said it's time. We got to make the leap, and we picked up and we moved to Israel, and we moved to a town called Efrat, the Jewish town of Efrat, which is really right along up against Bethlehem. We can't move to Bethlehem. Bethlehem is run by the Palestinian Authority, and there's a no Jews allowed rule. So even it's crazy. It's like a few hundred yards from my house, and I've lived there for 4 years, but I've never been there because I probably would be murdered within 5 minutes, right? And that's true of all of these Palestinian-run towns, right? Ramallah, all these different towns all throughout Judea, Samaria, which some people call the West Bank, right? That if you go into these towns, they have big signs, red signs that look like Nazi signs. They're like no Jews allowed. And if you go in there by accident, you're finished. So it's a little crazy. So, but we can't go into Bethlehem, but we live right next to it, and it's absolutely beautiful there. So my guess is that I'm the first Orthodox rabbi to speak in this beautiful church. Am I correct? I'm going out on a limb, right? This is probably the first one to walk in here. So I'm sure that many of you are thinking, maybe you're here out of curiosity, or wondering why in the world I'm here and why Pastor Todd brought me here. And that's a fair question. So you're all very polite. That's what I've discovered here in the Midwest. People are really generally very nice and polite. not like where I'm from in New York and New Jersey. So you're probably not asking, what in the world is a rabbi doing here? But I will answer that question. I will just give me a little time, and I will answer that question. And truthfully, at the end, we'll have some Q&A, and I'll say it straight. Like, you can ask anything you want because we're friends, right? Once you're friends, everything's on the table. It's all good. I don't get insulted. So if you've ever had a question you've always wondered about, wanted to understand better, and it seems awkward or uncomfortable or potentially insulting, don't worry about it. Save it to the end and ask away, and we'll talk about it. So, like I said, 4 years ago, I left my job as a synagogue rabbi in New Jersey. It was a good life. It was, I wouldn't say it was rich as a rabbi. I mean, we don't make as much as the pastors do, but we were doing just fine, My wife had a good job, my kids were happy, like everything was good. Everything was good. But we were drawn, in a way that is deeper really than I can express in words. We were drawn to be part of the miracle and the prophecy that is Israel, right? After 2,000 years of exile, and I don't know if people really tend to think in terms of thousands of years, in terms of millennia, but Jews, we only think in terms of millennia, right? Like we're the oldest nation, so we were like steeped in this history. So after 2,000 years of exile, we are somehow back in our land, as all the prophets said that we would be, and we are fighting for our lives. Right? We're fighting for our right to live in the land that God gave to us. So we said, this is it. This is our moment. My kids were getting older. Like, we had to go. It was like now or never, right? Because once your kids get older, they do their own thing. Then we'd be leaving them behind. I was like, I can't do that. So I said, we're going. And we took the plunge. And we moved to, what people call the West Bank, which is a terrible, terrible term, right? Because it's a meaningless term. The ancient names of these areas, right, are Judea, which is the area south of Jerusalem, and Samaria, the area north of Jerusalem. So we live south, right, of Jerusalem. So it takes about 20-25 minutes to drive into the holy city. It's kind of amazing, actually. And I have to tell you, Efrat is like the most beautiful place in the world. I can see Jerusalem from my porch, and Bethlehem, because Jerusalem's like right behind Bethlehem. You can see it all. We live on the side of a mountain, right? And this is where David grew up. Right? It was on these hills. That's where I live, And he was like a sweaty guy, right? He had his red hair. I don't know why the Amazon show, the David show, the House of David show, has him as like a dark-haired guy. Like it says in the Bible that he was red. That he had red hair, right? But it's a pretty good series overall. It's not bad. But I live on those hills where he had his flocks, where he was a shepherd, right? I mean, it's amazing. And I close my eyes and I feel the breeze. And I'm like, this is the same breeze that David felt, right? And I'm also a sweaty guy, right? It's amazing. Like, we're living it. We're here in the same place where our forefathers were. And it's just incredible. And even in the heat of the summer right now, and it is hot in Israel, on those mountains of Judea, you get that beautiful breeze. But at the same time, we are surrounded by danger and a lot of pain. So just to give you one example, about 2 years ago, it was April 2023, before October 7th. It was Passover, the second day of Passover. My neighbor and my friend, his name is Rabbi Elie. He was a rabbi from England, from London, who moved with his family to Israel as part of the great ingathering of the exiles. And he lives around the corner from me, and he's become, a really good friend of mine. So it was the second day of Passover, and he and his wife and their kids, they drove in 2 separate cars to go to a family gathering elsewhere in Israel. And as they were driving through the Jordan Valley, right, a terrorist drove by, and it was the other car with his wife and 2 of his daughters, and murdered them in cold blood, right, on the road. And like, hard to describe. Like, his daughters were, 19 and 15, and, really, these are girls that we knew, like, in the neighborhood, and they were the babysitters in the neighborhood. And for 6 months after that attack, my daughter, who's now, now at this point she's 14, but she was 12, almost 12. She's like slept in our bed for 6 months. Right? Why? Because she was afraid that a terrorist was going to climb through her window and slit her throat. right? Like that's a crazy thing for a 12-year-old girl to have to experience. So that was April 2023. Then comes October 2023, and rockets start falling everywhere, all the time. We're running in and out of the bomb shelter room. The way it started, it was on a Saturday. It was Shabbat. It was also the last day of the Feast of Tabernacles. So it was like a very big day. I was actually leading the service in the synagogue, which is right next door to my house. I was leading the service when the siren went off. The first siren went off near us, and everybody had to run because you have a little over a minute where we live to get to a bomb shelter room. So half the synagogue ran to my house because we were the closest house. Now I have teenage daughters, so of course they were still sleeping, right? And my daughters can sleep until 2 p.m. It's actually an impressive feat how late they can sleep. So I have like all these men, and like all these adults, they're like following me into my house, and the bomb shelter room is one of my daughter's bedrooms. So she's like under the covers, right, in her pajamas, and looking up, like everybody's in panic, and as like 30 men, run into her bedroom. Like, it's crazy. And that's how October 7th started for us. And my 12-year-old, at that point she was 12, she was having so much panic from, she has some anxiety, some kids have anxiety, like she wouldn't leave the bomb shelter room. So you're supposed to go in for 10 minutes, the threat passes, and you leave. I couldn't get her out for 2 hours. I was like, every time we'd go in, it was debilitating, to try to coax her out and to try to get her comfortable, it was a wild time. And I remember that afternoon, as we began to understand that what was going on here was not just a rocket or two, that there was something terrible that was happening. I stood on my porch, the one that overlooks Jerusalem, but it also overlooks like the road in front of me. I see all these houses and apartment buildings I can see, and I saw family after family, right, hugging their sons and their husbands, who have they had their uniforms on, going off to war. They had no idea what they were going to, right? Hugging, crying, right? And some of those husbands and sons did not come back, like on my block. Right? It's a real thing, right? Sometimes we read about wars that are far away, like, Ukraine and Russia bombed Ukraine, and this number died, and it's all so far away and feels so distant, right? And so it's not personal, it's not real. This is real, right? And these are people, these are our neighbors, these are our friends, these are their kids, their children. You know what it's like? Like we have friends in our neighborhood who, around our age, late 40s. They have like all boys. I have mostly girls. They have all boys. You know what it's like to have 4 sons in Gaza? Right? These are like 4 amazing, wonderful boys, and they're all in Gaza. How do you sleep as a mother, as a father? How do you even sleep at night? Right? And these are the heroes. My niece, my brother's daughter, got married like October 4th. And she married, happens to be, one of these guys, like, not like me, like, with his chest, bursting out of his shirt, like one of these, like, he's a special forces soldier. Like, that's what he was before the war. Like, and he looks it, he's like one of these guys, like, he shakes your hand feels like it's broken, So they got married October 4th. October 7th, he goes off to war. And over the last 18 months, I think maybe she spent 1 month with her husband. She got married, and she told me she has spent more time with her husband's grandparents than she has with her husband, right, over the last almost 2 years. Right, that's the sacrifice, right? It's a very, very real thing. Living on pins and needles, like this husband that she knows but almost doesn't know. Like, how well could she know him? Right. So, war is devastating, and every time we lose another precious boy, you don't hear about it in the news. All you hear about, right? And I was just in Chicago yesterday. All you hear about is fake news. Literally the front page of these Chicago papers, and I couldn't believe it. It's literally made up. That's why we're passing around this iPad, because we have Israel 365 News, which actually tells you really what's happening. So I'm not shy about it anymore. I'm like, you are literally being fed lies everywhere you go. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So that's why it's important to me. Like, that's like the number one thing whenever I go anywhere now. It's like, please sign up, and even if you don't read it every day, it's fine, but just have it there so that once in a, every day, every week, whatever it is that you do, you have a real place that you can go to and find out what's happening, because it's unbelievable, the lies that are out there. But I also want to share with you the positive side of the war, which maybe you're not hearing so much. This war has revealed the absolute greatness of the people of Israel, and particularly the young people of Israel. On October 7th, when thousands of these terrorists overran the border, and it was the greatest fail of the IDF, of Israel's army. It was a major failure, right? There have been some amazing victories since, right? Some unbelievable victories, like what just happened in Iran, incredible things, but that was a major, major failure. And everybody, it was in chaos. The army was in chaos, the government was in chaos, and the only thing that stopped this from being 10 times worse, it could have been so much worse, was the absolute extraordinary heroism of your average Israeli people. I mean, it's incredible. Do you know how many people just like took their gun, got in their car, and drove to the war zone? It's like the opposite of what you would expect to see. Normally, something terrible happens, people are fleeing. You had like hundreds, thousands of cars, with people coming just with their handguns. Like, we have to go and save. We have to go and help our fellow man. We have to go and save people, and whoever we can. And they did. And unbelievably, right? I mean, the number of people we lost on that day was terrible. It was like 1,200 people. It could have been 12,000. And it was because of unbelievable, heroic people. Many of them died. They didn't have to be there. They weren't called up. They just drove down. Both of my grandparents, my grandfathers on both sides, fought for the U.S. Army in World War II. Right, the greatest generation, and they were the greatest generation. And I wonder, like, what is it that made them the greatest generation? Were they fundamentally greater than us? I don't think so. I think they went through, a time in history when everything depended upon them, and they rose to the occasion. And that there was a greatness latent inside of them that came out, right? And they brought it to the surface, and they became the greatest generation. And that, frankly, is what we're seeing in Israel today. Our greatest generation, all right, are the kids who are like my children's age. They are unbelievable. They are absolutely astounding. All across the world, and frankly here in America too, there's a big problem with young people. A very big problem, and I'm not going to lie about it. I'm actually much more frightened for the future of America than I am for the future of Israel. Because I look at the young people, if you look at the polls, they say about 50% of Americans between 18 and 24 support Hamas, a genocidal terror group that wants to murder Jews and Christians. Half of America's young people believe that? Like, how's that possible, right? That's crazy. It's a sign of being lost, of being absorbed in the self and looking for purpose and for meaning in all the wrong places. But I can fortunately say that in Israel, it's the opposite. These young people, each one is more impressive than the next. They're just incredible. The selflessness, like the young people in my community, most of them go for 5 years after high school, a combination of Bible study and military service. They don't even start college, if they go to college, until their mid-20s. Right? Because it's not just about me and my career and myself. It's about something bigger. It's about the nation. It's about God's nation. Right? And what's amazing is that these young people are returning to God in a way that should be the talk of the whole world. Right? Israel is the only Western, first world country where the younger people are more connected to God than the older generation. It's astounding what is going on right now, right? If you know your history, when the modern state of Israel was founded in 1948, it was a largely secular, right, not religious, socialist country in 1948. Today, it is an incredibly traditional, nation. It's completely different. It's like the whole country has turned upside down, right? It's unbelievable. You have even the not so observant of all the laws of the Bible young people, right? Many of them may come from homes where they never talked about God. When they come to the army, they're all praying together. They're all praying together, right? It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. I'll give you one example. The number one item sold in Israel last year, right, was tzitzit, the fringes, that the Bible talks about, right? I'm actually wearing them under my shirt right now. If you want, I can show you, right? Like the four-cornered garments, right? Like these tzitzit. It's the number one item being sold in Israel last year. There's a shortage. They had Jewish people across the world were making them. And because there was such a demand, every soldier wanted multiple pairs. Because, you sweat through them in Gaza, in the heat. Like they needed hundreds of thousands of pairs. Everybody. It didn't matter if you had grown up, being connected to religion or not. Everybody wanted it. There's like this yearning for godliness and for the Bible that's happening in Israel today that we need to talk about more. It's incredible. It's a fulfillment of prophecy. No question. Right? And it's astounding to see. And think about all the victories. These are not just victories that have happened since October 7th. The pager attack, do you all remember the pager attack?
Yes.
Okay, right, where Israel somehow, right, became the supplier of pagers for Hezbollah terrorists in Lebanon, the ones that murdered hundreds of American Marines in the 1980s, right? And they put explosives in every single pager, right, and blew up over 1,000 evil terrorists within 3 minutes, right? It's astounding. And then what happened in Iran, there's over 90 million people who live in Iran. Iran is also very far from Israel. We don't share a border. You're talking like it's far. And yet in 12 days, tiny little Israel brought Iran to its knees. And we crushed them. But even before President Trump ordered those planes from Missouri to go and take out the nuclear facilities, even before that, right, Israel had brought Iran to its knees in 12 days. It's insane. The country is 10 times larger than Israel in every way, in terms of people, and it's insane. Took down their air defenses, everything. All their nuclear scientists, all of their military leadership. Everybody, this is like a military victory that's almost supernatural, right? It's astounding. The government thought that this was going to be a war in which we would lose like minimum a few thousand civilians, right? Because Iran was shooting bombs, at apartment buildings. They're totally not looking for military. They bombed a hospital in Beersheba in the south, right? We lost 29 people. Each one was a tragedy. 29 people? They thought it was going to be minimum 2,000. And the fact that we only lost 29 people, even Prime Minister Netanyahu was becoming, like a religious Jew, right? He's like returning to God. I mean, this was not really a particularly, godly man, and but now that's all he talks about is God, God, God. It's happening. So the question is, though, this is our war. There's no question. But what does it have to do with you? What does it have to do with all of you here in beautiful southern Indiana, right? So I think it has a lot to do with all of you. It's not just Israel's war. What's happening now, whether we realize it or not, is a world war. Within hours of the slaughter on October 7th, right, even as the bodies of Jewish children, they murdered 40 babies, right? They burned their bodies, and all these women that were raped, right? Even as their bodies were still lying on the ground, all of a sudden there were mass demonstrations against Jews all across the world, right? 300,000 people marching in London. It's terrifying, right? London has fallen, everybody, right? It's frightening what's been happening all over the world, and it hasn't stopped ever since, right? And it's not just Jews, right? I'm not sure, again, I don't know if people are paying attention. You can tell me if people are, because I'm not here, so I don't know. But the attacks on Christians are happening with frightening regularity as well. Even from the very beginning, they were attacking Christmas tree lightings right? December 2023. Do you remember this? Like at the Rockefeller Christmas tree lighting in New York City? They were attacking that, right? Just a short time ago in Kentucky, right? The Muslim terrorists murdered people in a church, right? This is happening. So what's that about, right? What are they doing here? Right, we have to realize, and I just mentioned this before to my friends in the back, this is something that's really wild, right? You probably don't know this, but the early iterations of the Palestinian flag, from the 70s and 80s, when they first decided that they wanted to become their own country, right? It's a new thing. They had written in small print in Arabic on their flags, and you can find pictures online that show this, a line on the bottom that says, "On Saturday we kill the Jews, on Sunday we kill the Christians." That's, I kid you not, it's not made up, that's a real thing, you can look it up online. It's a real thing, right? It's a real thing, and they are committed, not just to killing the Jews, but also to killing the Christians. So the question is why? And more fundamentally, and this is what I tried to explain in the book that I wrote, from a biblical perspective, why is it that we find these strange alliances that are happening in the world today? Why is it that so many, really like radical, woke progressive types are allied together with Hamas, right, and Iran? These are like genocidal regimes, right? Like, have you seen the signs that say, lesbians for Hamas? Right? I think Prime Minister Netanyahu said it's like chickens for KFC, right? It's insane. It makes no sense. They throw gay people off of roofs in Gaza. That's what they do with them, right? So how are these people coming together? Why are they joining together? And why are they targeting Jews and Christians? Right, and that's when I meant what I said when I said it was a world war. There's something deeper that's happening here. It's obviously not just Israel and Gaza or Israel and Iran. This war is happening all throughout Europe, right? It's happening here in America. Right? There's a battle for America's soul, for the future of this country, right? So what is this about? What's happening? Right? So I think we have to understand a little bit deeper as to what drives these jihadists. Okay, what is it about them? These children of Ishmael, right? They are the descendants of Ishmael, and they say that. We agree with them on that. We believe that they are the descendants of Ishmael, right? They believe in God, right? When they raped and murdered on October 7th, they did that in the name of Allah, right? They did that in the name of God. So how does that happen? Right? So what went wrong there? The question is, what are they missing? Right? You see, these people believe in God, but they do not believe in the Bible. Right? And that, everybody, is the difference. Right? That is the difference. It's one thing to believe in God, and believing in God gives you, if you really believe, you have tremendous passion. But how do you guide that passion in a holy way? How do you know that you're not just serving your own self and saying that it's God? Well, that's what the Bible tells us. And everybody, that's what we share in common. There's no question that Jews and Christians, there are a lot of differences between us, for sure. But we shouldn't ever lose sight for a moment of something truly extraordinary, which is that all of us in this room, all of us believe that God gave the Torah, the Bible, to Moses at Mount Sinai. That's astounding that we all share that in common. We live thousands of miles away. We come from radically different traditions and places and so different parts of the world, right? And yet here we are talking together. We have such an incredible shared basis of belief. Right? The Bible is where God tells us, you're all passionate, great, but you have to direct that passion in a holy way. Right? There are do's and there are don'ts. Right? And if you truly believe in the Bible, right, you can go ahead and sin. Lots of people believe in the Bible and sin, but you can't say that God is telling you to rape and to murder in the name of God. That you can't do. That you can't do. Right? And that's what they are missing. Right? And so there's a hatred, right, among these radical Islamists. There's a hatred for the Bible, an absolute hatred. And we find the same thing when it comes to the extreme anti-God progressives here in America. Right? What do they hate? Right? So they are a little different than Islamists. They don't believe in God. And they certainly don't believe in the Bible. And they hate the Bible. Why? Because it's the Bible which says that men are men, that women are women, right? It's the Bible that says you have to live your life in this way and not in that way, right? The Bible is, even in America today, where so many people have left God, is nevertheless the foundation of our laws, right? It's the foundation of our society. And that's exactly what they want to overturn. And so these people, right here in America today and across Europe, where they've taken control in many countries, right? They despise the Bible and are trying to overturn everything the Bible stands for. And that, everybody, is what they share in common with the jihadists. Right? Now, what's fascinating from the biblical perspective is that Daniel, right, in the 2nd chapter in Daniel, he tells us, right, all about Nebuchadnezzar's dream, right? The emperor, the one who destroyed the first temple, the emperor of Babylonia, he has a dream, right? And that dream is of a statue of a man, right? You know this, you remember this from your Bible study? And it's got 4 parts, the head, and then the upper torso, and then the lower part, and then the legs, right? And finally, and they represent, says Daniel, the 4 kingdoms that will oppress the people of Israel before the end of time. And then finally, God will come after the 4th kingdom, right? And then God will reign over the world, right? And all of that evil will be done. It will be gone. So who are these 4 kingdoms? So Daniel tells us explicitly that the head, the first kingdom, is Babylonia. Now, our tradition, I'd be curious to hear, you can tell me later if it's the same in Christian tradition, but our tradition is that the second kingdom is Persia and Media, the story of Purim, right? The story of Mordecai and Esther, right? And Haman. So that was the second kingdom. And our tradition is that the third kingdom, right, are the Greeks, and that's the story of Hanukkah, right, where they oppressed and tried to end belief in the Bible. They tried to stop the people of Israel from worshiping God. That was the third kingdom. But what about the fourth kingdom? The legs, and that fourth kingdom is described as the worst and most terrible of all. What is that fourth kingdom? So if you read closely in Daniel, it says that fourth kingdom is very interesting. It's a divided kingdom, right, of clay and iron. You can read it in the verses. It's right there, right, of clay and iron. So what is that? What does that mean? It means it's a kingdom that has 2 parts that are in an unstable alliance with one another. Okay? Iron and clay don't really fit well together. So they join together in their persecution of Israel. Right? They join together, but they're not really stable. They don't really like each other either. And who are those? And so our tradition says, right, that those two, the 2 halves of the fourth kingdom, are Ishmael and Esau. And who is Ishmael? Ishmael, of course, we see today. We know what Ishmael is. Ishmael is Iran. Ishmael is Hamas. Ishmael is Hezbollah, is radical Islam, right, the Islamics that are trying to take over the world. That's Ishmael. That's 1/2 of the fourth kingdom. And what about Esau? Who was Esau, everybody?
Israel.
Right? Esau is not Israel, right? Esau, Jacob's brother, right? The twin brother. What about Esau? Esau, everyone, clearly rejects God, right? Remember when he sells his birthright to Jacob for a bowl of soup, right? A bowl of lentil soup? What's going on there? Right? So our tradition says that that's when his grandfather, Abraham, had died. And he has a crisis, a religious crisis. And he says, if even the holy Abraham, my grandfather, the greatest man to ever live, if even he is now buried underground like anybody else, clearly there is no God. Right? I'm done with it. Right? And the verse says that I am going to my death. What do I need the birthright for? Meaning, we're all mortal. Let's eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we shall die. Esau at that moment rejected God, rejected it all. He didn't want the birthright. He didn't want the responsibility. He didn't want to be part of this chosen nation. He didn't want any of it. Esau, everyone, right, is the father of the modern hater of God. Right? And so today, this unholy alliance between Islamic jihadists on the one hand and the anti-God progressives on the other is like Ishmael and Esau joining forces. And what do they share in common? Their hatred of the Bible. Because the Bible restricts them from doing what they want. Right? Because when you have no God, you make yourself into a God. Right? I think Bob Dylan said, right? Everybody's got to serve someone, right? Everybody's got to serve somebody. So if you're not serving God, you're serving yourself. Right? And that's exactly what happens today. Ishmael and Esau, everybody, are alive and well. And they have joined together in this unstable alliance, because they don't really like each other, fundamentally, right? They throw gay people off of roofs in Gaza, as I said. They've joined together in their war against the Bible. How do you fight the Bible? You fight the people of the Bible. And who, everybody, are the people of the Bible? My people and your people, right? We are all the people of the Bible, Jews and Christians. We're the ones who believe in the Bible. And that's why they want to kill the Jews on Saturday, and they want to kill the Christians on Sunday. So you see what's happening here is a world war. This is not just about Israel. It's certainly centered in Israel because, of course, Israel is God's holy land. It's the chosen land. It is the center of everything. That's where all the crazy stuff of before redemption, all of it goes down and it centers around the land of Israel. But it is a world war. And that's the great question is what will happen, right? Not just in Israel, but here in America as well. Right? That battle is happening every single day in this country. And it's not about just who wins elections. It's about who's winning the hearts and the minds of the next generation. Right? That's really the war that's happening. And can we win it? Right? That's the question. And I think we can win it. I think we can win it by joining forces. Right? And this is why I'm here with you today. The first rabbi in, how old is this church?
Gosh, it's over 100 years old.
Over 100 years. The first rabbi to speak in your church.
1887.
Right? That is something. I hope this church has many hundreds of years in its future. Right? It's amazing that it's been around for so long. What a tradition and a beautiful sanctuary here. This is, got to use this room more, not just the new building. This is beautiful. Feel connected to your history. But, you know, me coming here, I know there's nothing normal about this, right? But desperate times call for desperate measures. Just to explain to you how abnormal this is in history, okay? Go back in history to World War II. So one of my grandfathers fought in Europe in the Battle of the Bulge, and he was badly injured, but thank God he survived. And my other grandfather, who was an edgy personality, he was in the Navy, and he was on his way to the Pacific when on one of these ships, you know, these huge ships carrying the soldiers out to the Pacific, a Christian from Texas came over to him and said, "Hey, Jew boy, show me your devil horns," right? This was 1944, I think. That makes sense. About 80, a little over 80 years ago, right? As if he, like, you know, Jews actually have horns. We don't. I can show you if anyone wants to see afterwards. You're all invited to rub my head. There are no horns, okay? So my grandfather was really a hothead. I don't know how else to say it. He was just a hot-headed personality. He hit the guy so hard that he knocked him unconscious. He was almost thrown out of the Navy in World War II. So that's 80 years ago. Fast forward to Texas, right? 2 years ago, I was in Texas at somebody's beautiful home in their living room. There were 50 people there, 50 Christians. I gave a little talk, and then I figured, okay, I'll answer a couple questions, and then I was going to leave. After the talk was over, I was there. They lined up. And there were 2.5 hours of people waiting in line to ask questions, to talk, just to speak. At a certain point, I was like, everybody, I love you. I just need to go to the bathroom. Like, it was unbelievable, right? The love that I felt in that room. And I actually was literally living out, right, the prophecy from the 8th chapter of what we say in Hebrew is Zechariah or Zechariah. Zechariah chapter 8, you can look it up now, right? Where it says that the day will come when there will be 10 members of the nations grabbing onto the shirt of every Jew saying, teach us the Torah, teach us the Bible. So I lived that, only it was 50 and not 10, okay? It was astounding. And there are people that I've been in touch with ever since from that day. It was like life-changing for me. And I remember thinking, like 80 years earlier, you know, my grandfather had his experience with a Christian from Texas. And here I am today, and it's miraculous. All the prophecies that we talk about that are coming true in Israel as we speak, those are amazing. But this is also this is equally amazing. This is equally miraculous, right? It was a really bad 1900 years, everybody. Jews and Christians, it was really bad, right? That's why if you meet Jews in general in America today, they're like still in trauma, right? They get nervous. Oh, what do those Christians want from me, right? It has nothing to do with you or today. It has to do with history, right? Because there was so much fear from all of those generations. And the fact that now it's the opposite, and the only true friends that Jews have in the world today are devout Christians, is nothing short of miraculous. And we have to acknowledge that and give thanks to God for that. It has changed my life. I'll give you just one amazing example. Growing up as, my parents did not grow up knowing anything about God or the Bible or whatever. They found God in college, right? A rabbi found them and taught them about their own heritage, right? The vast majority of Jews in America are ignorant and know nothing about the Bible and about what it means to be a Jew. It's one of the great tragedies of our time. So my parents, thankfully, right, to their credit, and the people who found them and taught them, so they came back to God. And my dad and my mom and dad, like when they're newly married, my dad got his first job on Wall Street. And it was very hard, right? There was plenty of anti-Semitism back then, 1970s. He had to leave early on Friday to make it home in time for Shabbat. And they were like dock him pay, and they were like, give him the stink eye. It was like he felt very out of place, very alone. There's one other person there that he formed a friendship with, who also felt very out of place. His name was Emory Dawson, and he was a black man. Right, and in the 70s on Wall Street, there was still plenty of racism too. So, the Orthodox Jew and the black guy, the two of them together, right, they formed this friendship. But then they realized that they had something much deeper in common. Because my parents had come and found God, and Emory was a devout Christian. Devout. And they then connected on a much deeper level, right, over the Bible. And every year on the Feast of Tabernacles, in Hebrew we call it Sukkot, when we build those huts, right, in our backyard, every year it became a family tradition. The Dawsons came, and they would come for a Shabbat meal with us, because they loved the whole Feast of Tabernacles thing. They loved it. And I remember when I was 20, I got a call from Emory, and he said, what are you doing on Sunday? Because we want to bring, 50 people from our church to your synagogue, and can you give us a tour, right? And I did. I gave like a 3-hour tour to this Baptist church. It was kind of amazing, right? And that's how I got started in all of this. It was just life-changing to me, right? This is not something to take for granted, everyone. It is astounding. It is incredible. And we merit to live at such a time. It's a hard time, and there's a great evil in the world that we're fighting. But we should also recognize the unbelievable light in the world. For every darkness that God brings to the world to challenge us, right, there's an equal light that we can bring out and overcome that darkness. And this, I think, is the light that the world needs to see. That Jews and Christians are finally, after so many generations, right, are coming together in friendship. Right, and mutual respect, right? I'm not here to change you. I don't want to make anybody Jewish. That's not my goal, right? I don't know if you know that, actually. Jews do not evangelize. We don't proselytize. When people want to convert to Judaism, we say, are you sure? Do you know what it's been like? Have you read the news? Right? So we actually push people away the first few times, and only if they're adamant do we okay, you can join. But we're not trying to, we don't believe that you need to be Jewish to go to heaven. That's not our goal at all. We want you to be devout, unbelievable Christians. That's what we want. Because that's what God wants from us, not all of us to be the same. And so, what we have today is absolutely astounding. And it's an incredible, incredible job that I have. I mean, think about this. I get to work for Israel 365, which is the number one, it's one of the only, frankly, but definitely the largest and most important Jewish organization in the world that works to bring Jews and Christians together in friendship. and to build this alliance together. And that's how it goes. We start in friendship, we get to know each other, and then we move from there, we start to study things together, not the things that divide us, but to try and make sure to educate, because there are a lot of people out there that just don't know what's really happening in Israel and so on. And finally, we actually advocate together, right? We have a branch in Dallas, right? We made some powerful friends there, and Jews and Christians go together to Washington, and we're doing like big things together. It's amazing what we can do when we join together. We're much, much more powerful, and we can make sure to save, not only to help Israel, but to save this country, right? Because believe me, a world without America, as we know it, would be a very dark world, right? This is the other chosen country, the other chosen nation. And it's 100% true. It's absolutely true. The Pilgrims knew it, and we shouldn't forget, everybody rolls their eyes when you say Pilgrims, but like, how many countries started with the Bible, like front and center that way, right? With that kind of consciousness. They used Israel, they used the Hebrew Bible like as the model for what they wanted to create here. And we can get there. That can happen if we join together. Now look, we have a new enemy that I haven't even mentioned yet. And it's a very, very dangerous one. And I have to bring it up. Right? You had somebody here talk about, a pastor come and talk about replacement theology. Right? And this is part of the great miracle of Jews and Christians coming together, is this, after so many generations of Christianity being kind of held in prison by this replacement theology prison, which is against everything that the New Testament says, right? Paul, right? I mean, Paul said, right, he rejected replacement theology. It was the most unchristian thing, but it's sadly now making a comeback. And it's being led by people that I think many of us in this room maybe still do, or certainly in the past, respected, right? People like Tucker Carlson, right? It's a great, great brokenness, but what he's doing now and the evil that he's causing in the world, and so many others like him, Candace Owens, and there's so many people, Ian Carroll, so many names of these people who are trying, their number one goal is to separate Jews from Christians. That is their goal. That is what they're trying to do. They talk about it all the time. They're trying to create a wedge between us. So yes, he's much more famous than we are, than Israel 365, but we are like direct enemies, because what he is trying to do, we are fighting back on exactly that point. That is exactly where the battle is today. In the Bible, I don't want to repeat it because you had this opportunity so recently here, but the Bible is so clear. Both the Hebrew Bible, right, the Old Testament, and also the New Testament. Absolutely clear, right? That God does not break his promises, right? And even if you didn't believe in the Bible, I don't know, just open your eyes. What nation was exiled from their land for 2,000 years, somehow didn't disappear, and now are coming back, fulfilling every last promise of the prophets from thousands of years ago? It's insane. You have to be blind, purposely blind, right? Remember, I think Paul Simon said, right, a man hears what he wants to hear and disregards the rest. People who believe in replacement theology do so against everything that they see, right, in violation of their senses. Right? You can't deny the fact that what is happening in Israel today. Right? It is crazy. No nation has ever done that, has ever returned. Only God's will can make that happen. Only God's will. And this is why this relationship, this friendship is so important. Aren't we all concerned about young people? Right? The majority of us in this room are over a certain age, right? We're the young people. Right? How do we get the young people to believe? You know what? You want young people to believe? Just show them Israel. Right? We gotta start raising money, not to send retired pastors to Israel. We gotta start raising money to send all of your kids and grandchildren to Israel. Right? Not to become Jews, to become Christians, to become strong Christians. Right? It's my physical homeland, and it's your spiritual homeland. To come and see the miracles of the Bible coming true today, it's astounding. I do this all the time. I lead trips with young Christians. It's amazing. I lead it together with a pastor, right? It's kind of cool. That hasn't happened before too much, right? Where like the rabbi and the pastor are leading these trips, and I see what happens to these young people. It's life-changing for them. It's absolutely life-changing. So we can do this. There's so much that we can do together. Right? But first we have to get to know each other. Tonight I was telling Pastor Todd and Melinda that I'm going to Indianapolis. There's a small traditional Bible-believing Jewish community in Indianapolis, and I'm staying with a few people there who are like excited to get to know you. Like they want, here, look, it's an hour away. It's not that far, right? Let's start in that way, by getting to know each other, right? Nice, normal, lovely people. They're just like you. They have real biblical values, traditional people, not like the Jews you see on TV who seem to hate the Bible, right? Some of those people on TV. No, they're like real people, real believers who respect you and want to get to know you. And so that would be my final request. Let's join together. Let this be a beginning. If you can, sign up, stay connected, read the news, know what's happening in Israel. Think about a way, and you could talk to this incredible couple up here, right, about how to get to Israel and how to get your young people to Israel. We can help you do that. That's one of the many things that we do, right? It's our priority to bring people to Israel, all of every age. But come to Israel; it'll change your life. So, with that, everyone, please. I thank you so much for coming out here. Right, I know this is not Wednesday night. This is not the usual. So you came out special, and I really appreciate it. And with that, I'm going to stop here. But I don't want to go any further without some opportunity for some Q&A. So really, we're friends. I could see it on all your faces. Anything that you want to ask, you've ever wondered, feel free to ask. Now's the time. Go ahead.
We don't have a roaming mic. You'll have to speak up if you have a question for Rabbi Mischel. Don't be shy. Somebody break it open. I know.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
I used to teach world history, and I'm a little bit different. I try to get Christian perspective into history, and I might be wrong with this because it's been several years since I've been in the classroom, but the horn thing. It seems like Michelangelo did a sculpture of Moses.
Yeah.
And
The word Karen in Hebrew can mean, in that context, when it said that when Moses came down from Mount Sinai, he was like so in that awesome holy place. It talked about his Karen, but that it can mean two things. It means like the light on his face, like the rays of light, which is really what it was talking about. But Karen in other contexts can mean horn. So if it's mistranslated, which it was, that's where this whole terrible anti-Semitic made-up tradition comes from, that Jews have horns, right? It was just Moses who had that light. That's what it was. I wish I had it. I don't have it. But anyway, but that's where it comes from.
Is on the Holocaust, when I taught the Holocaust. It's like, the students like, well, it's just something wartime thing, that people kill people. And I said, there's a purpose behind this that has to do with the Bible that is really not clear. But why would Germany want to kill and persecute Jews when Einstein was a Jew? And Einstein developed the atomic bomb. Why would they militarily or any other way want to not have that advantage? Well, there's something beyond worldly things. It was spiritual. It was a spiritual war against the Jews. There's so many kinds of history, the different peoples. And you talked about Persia and Babylon. They tried to kill and eliminate the Jews. Who would want to do that? Well, Satan wants to do that because Satan doesn't want God to fulfill his purpose, because in the end, Satan is going to get thrown into the lake of fire. And that's why a lot of the things in history happen, and people don't really think about that and relate that.
Well, Hitler was the ultimate Esau, right? Meaning Hitler didn't believe in God, right? And he says this actually in Mein Kampf, which is his evil autobiography, where he spelled out what he was going to do, and then he did it. Nobody took him seriously, but he spelled it out, right? And he talked about how Jews represent morality, right? The morality of the Bible, and he didn't want that. And he wanted to eliminate that, right? And that's exactly, that's what he attempted to do. sadly with great success, right? But it was very much a spiritual battle, right? It certainly didn't help him win World War II, right? It would have been helpful to have those Jews, right? Jews were like among the most patriotic Germans, of that era, right? You know how many thousands of Jews died in World War I for Germany? Right? Thousands and thousands. They won medals and so on. And like you said, Einstein and all that, right? It would have helped him win World War II.
Yeah. Right? I'm so glad to hear your message tonight. As a Christian, I'm not Jewish. I'm not the chosen people. You are. The Jews are God's chosen people. That's clear in the Bible. But Christians are grafted onto the vine. We have been grafted on by Jesus. And that's why not only why we worship God together, but because someday we'll be in the same kingdom, and you'll be the priests and we'll be the people. But that's okay. We're all in the same kingdom of God. And I'm glad to hear your message tonight, and I'm going to do whatever I can to help you out as an individual. And I thank you for making the long journey to Northern. I never thought I'd be able to hear talk about you gave tonight here in Northern Indiana.
Oh, thank you so much.
Coming here and the pastor for inviting you, and God must have moved you to be here because for some reason we need to hear your message, and I'm thankful to hear your message.
Thank you. Well, the moment I met them, I knew I had to come. And you just mentioned really Isaiah 2, right? Where Isaiah, has this incredible vision. And this is the vision that we talk about in Israel 365 all the time, right? The day is going to come, the second chapter, the beginning, of Isaiah, when the temple will be rebuilt, a house of prayer for all nations. And I tell my fellow Jews all the time, guys, you got to get used to this. We're going to be a minority in the temple, okay? It's going to be, because there aren't that many of us, right? It's going to be mostly like Christians and others, like it's going to be the nations that are coming. We're going to be just like small minority on our own temple, right? Like you said, it's going to be, we're going to join there together in prayer. That's the vision. That's the vision, 100%. So thank you so much. It means so much to hear everything that you're saying. You had your hand raised in the back. I'm sorry, I don't want to.
When you were speaking on how Bethlehem that Jews are killed on sight, is that just Jews, or is there other religions or nationalities that are not?
So thank you for what's happening in Bethlehem is a terrible, terrible tragedy. Bethlehem used to be a Christian city. Now it is an almost entirely Muslim city. The Christians are persecuted terribly there. Unless they trust you and unless there's not one other person in the room. I have a good friend, a Christian pastor, who goes to Bethlehem to try to help the persecuted Christians there. They're so terrified to talk. They won't talk unless it's literally just the two of them in the room together, and they whisper, right? Because if the Muslims find out that they're ratting them out about what's going on there, right, they'll kill them. Like it's actually horrific what's going on right now, right? Persecuted Christians, it's a real thing in the Middle East, right? I don't know if you know this. The only country in the Middle East where the Christian population is growing and is safe is Israel. There are 200,000 Christians today in Israel, and it's growing all the time. It's a growing population. Christians are very happy in Israel. They have freedom of religion. They're part of the country. They fight in the IDF. They're part of it. It's amazing. But everywhere else, it's a disaster. There are Christians being slaughtered, beheaded, literally today as we speak in southern Syria. Literally today. And the only country in the world that is trying to defend them is Israel. Sadly, even America is pressuring Israel to stop fighting to defend the Syrian Christians and the Syrian Druze. I don't know if you know what the Druze are. They're like a different religion, a small minority group that is they're good people, and they're being slaughtered by ISIS in Syria. And only Israel is fighting to protect them. Right? There's this, the persecuted Christians in the Middle East, it's disastrous what's going on. And so, now that Israel is becoming a superpower, right, after defeating Iran, I think it's going to be, and I hope and I pray that this is the direction that Israel will go in. It looks like we are, is that Israel will be like the mini America, right, the America of the Middle East, where we go and we defend the minorities in all of these countries. We can fly in over Iran now and bomb Iran if they try to touch Christians in Iran. Like, we can do that now. And that's, I think, an important role, right? That's what America, that's the greatness always of America. Why this country was the country of kindness, why this country is so unique, is that we go to war, right? Not for conquest, but to protect people, right? And it's an amazing thing. And so Israel is playing that role today. So Bethlehem is really frightening. You guys can go to Bethlehem. It's scary even for Christians, but you can go. I might be able to join a Christian tour group, put on a hat, take off my my yarmulke and pretend that I'm a Christian. Maybe that's the only way I could ever get into Bethlehem, but it would be risky. Yeah.
How about Mordecai's aqueduct? Get you into Bethlehem?
Oh, yeah. Exactly.
Just land there?
Yeah. No, look, I would love, there's so many things I would love to see in Bethlehem. I can't go. It's off limits. Yeah.
You mentioned that there's what I call more of a revival in Israel with the young people actually seeking God. I have two questions. Number one, is the older generation becoming enlightened with that, especially what's happening? And then the second question, in the American Jews, are they getting lit with a fire and seeking God now? I mean, it doesn't seem like they are.
Two great questions. So first for Israel, it's if you pay close attention to the news reports and like when you see like these left-wing protests or something like against the prime minister, most of the people there are over like the age of 60. That's just like, so the younger people are not joining those protests in the numbers that they would have in 30, 40, 50 years ago. And I'll give you one example. I just wrote an article. This is amazing. There at some of these totally non-religious secular high schools in Israel, they're having like a rebellion among the kids. From the Bible, it talks about the phylacteries. I don't know if you've ever seen pictures. Like I wear them every morning. I have them in my car, right? It's one of the commandments of the Bible. You put them on your head and on your arm, right? The phylactery, we call it in Hebrew, it's called tefillin. So these kids are like they make like phylactery stations in their secular high schools, and the parents are freaking out. They're like, it'd be much better if their kids were going off into a corner smoking a joint or something, right? Like, why are you putting on phylacteries? Like, we'd rather you do drugs. Like, it's crazy. But you have kids, high school kids, who are, what do we do? What do we know in high school? And yet these kids they feel that they're being robbed of their tradition, and they're demanding to be able to put it on. That's crazy. That's like the ultimate reverse rebellion, teenage rebellion. They're rebelling for God. It's absolutely insane. I'll send Pastor Todd the article. I can share it with you. It's absolutely incredible what is happening there. Now, what is happening in America? It's a different question, right? In America, it's much worse because the vast majority of Jews here are so distant. They don't even know, so many of them don't even know they're Jewish, right? And the ones who do grew up with absolutely nothing, and they have no tools to return. In Israel, it's a tiny little country, and if you want to reach and find out about God, it's very easy. You just turn around. There's rabbis everywhere, right? You can find them. You can find people to teach you. But in America, it's much, much harder. And now there has been an awakening to some degree of, since October 7th. I'll give you one famous example. Do you remember Sheryl Sandberg? She was like the COO of Facebook, I think. A Jewish woman who like knew nothing, was like totally disconnected from God and the Bible. And she has had her whole family has like completely turned upside down. Like her kids were anti-religious, they were anti-God, and now they're all like reconnecting with their identity, and they feel like part of their nation and their peoplehood and so on. So that is happening. I meet Jews like this all over the place, but not to the same extent or the numbers that you're finding in Israel. So,
you mentioned earlier about people demonstrating against Israel worldwide. And you mentioned there was a big one in London, and then also in America, people are demonstrating against them. Do you feel like that's spiritual warfare?
Absolutely, right? You see the combination in these places. I mean, look at Europe, right? Europe is a disaster zone. Most of Europe, right? England, France, these places between the godlessness on the one hand and the jihadists, the Muslims on the other, who are the mass Muslim immigration, these countries have fallen. They don't stand for anything anymore. It's crazy. England like held up the whole world. Winston Churchill, right? They folded. England is a Muslim country essentially at this point, right? If you look at all the major cities of England, they all have Muslim mayors. Now again, I'm not trying to be like a bigot or something totally anti-Islam, and there are some very good good Muslims. In particular, I would say like the UAE, United Arab Emirates, they're building a branch of moderate Islam over there, which gives a little bit of hope for the future, right? But sadly, right, there are very few Muslims around the world. Even the moderate ones, they never stand up to protest, the extreme ones. The extremist ones are the ones who are running the show. And that's a frightening thing. It's a really frightening thing. So that what's happening in Europe is terrifying, and it can happen here too. It can happen here too. And so it's so critical that the future here, somehow trying to find a way to bring young people back to God so America does not turn into London and into Paris.
Well, follow up to that, here in our country we have a lot of liberal teachers in colleges and even in high school, I guess. Do you notice that, and do you see that in Europe?
It's a disaster. Yeah, no, it's absolutely a disaster, 100%. And look, you have to avoid you can't send your children to those places. It's just absolutely, you can't do it. I mean, like if we had stayed in America and not moved to Israel, there's no way that my children would have gone to a normal university, a normal college. Not a chance. I can't let that. How could it be, right? Besides, so it's what they get from the professors, but also just the anti-Semitism on campus. It's such a toxic, horrible environment. I mean, think about America's greatest universities are the worst of all. Columbia University, Harvard, these places need to be shut down for a few years, you fumigate them, and start over. I mean, it's evil what's happening in these places, right? It's absolutely evil. Yeah. No, it's frightening. That's what I'm saying. The war is not over, right? There are people who are like, yeah, President Trump, okay, great, it's wonderful. And I don't want to get into politics. I agree with a lot of what he does, but it doesn't mean that this country it's done, that everything is good. Like look at the young people, and that's where the battle is today. It goes way deeper than any politics. It's all about if they have God, right, and they understand where they come from and what life is about, and they connect to the Bible and understand what Israel is, right? You can really say, actually, that the world splits into two halves. Those who are against Israel, right, on one side, and those who are for it. And it's good and evil. All of you here are on the side of good. We need more churches like this, and they need to be packed full. Bring them back here to this amazing church. Sure. Yeah.
I got several questions. Like when you sat underneath the rabbi when you was 13, did you have to quote the first 5 books of the Torah?
You say say again, I'm sorry?
If you sat under a rabbi, did you have to quote the first 5 books of the Torah, memorize it?
Oh, to become a rabbi?
Yeah. Like is that one?
Well, you don't have to memorize the Bible, no.
No, the Torah.
The Torah. I'm saying you don't have to memorize the 5 books of the Torah to become a rabbi. We have like rabbinical school, sort of like you have the theological seminaries and people go and study. We have like a whole areas of study that we have to do that are different from Christians, right? Which is basically the commandments, right? Which how to fulfill those and so on. And we don't believe that you all have to do that. Though it's interesting. There are many Christians today that want to do some of the commandments in some way, which is very interesting. What's happening here in America? I mean, everywhere I go, I meet Christians like that. But that's what we spend a lot of time also, because we have to be able to lead communities in that way. But yeah, you got to know the Bible, 100%. What you reminded me of is I have 2 books here. So I have The War Against the Bible, which is really all about this topic we were talking about today. But then this past year, I wrote a book that I was not planning to write, but because last summer I traveled all across the country, and I kept meeting Christians everywhere that wanted to talk about Shabbat, the Sabbath. Like they want to keep it in some way. I was kind of surprised by it everywhere I went. I was meeting, I was in Lubbock, Texas, and I did a mock Shabbat meal and kind of showed people how we do it, and it was 100 Christians were sitting there writing down every word that I said. I was like, there's something going on here. This is very interesting. So I decided I wrote a book basically because they asked me to about how do we do Shabbat? Now, I want to be very clear. We don't believe that you all have to keep all the commandments of the Torah the way that we do. We're not trying to make anybody Jewish. That's not the goal. And I'm very clear about that in the book, right? But because there were so many people who wanted to know, since we've kind of kept Shabbat as I would say it's like our national treasure for the last several thousand years, right? We have a saying, a famous Jew once said that more than the Jews have kept Shabbat, Shabbat has kept the Jews, right? The reason why we're still alive today and that we didn't just disappear is because we have Shabbat. And so we've sort of been like the world's guardians of Shabbat. But the truth is, the Sabbath, it predates the Jews, right? If you look at your Bible in Genesis, right? Before there were any Jews on this earth, when it was just Adam and Eve, God created the Sabbath, right? So it belongs to the world. Now, so we have a special relationship with it, that we've been keeping it in this way, but people are yearning for it because it's a holy day that can save you from the insanity of the modern world. We don't use our phones we don't turn on a TV or a computer. It's like totally cut. That's it. The world stops. We're just with our families and our community. We pray, we eat, we laugh. I play board games with my kids. It's awesome. We study the Bible. It's like the best day of the week. So that's the other book that I wrote here because people asked for it. So if you have an interest, I have that here as well. But that's those are the kinds of things that we have to study to become rabbis.
Another question is, what's the highest form, like the original translation of God's name? Because I know Psalm 68:4, it goes to Yah, but what is the translation from the rabbis?
Right. So you've got on your shirt you've got in Hebrew one of God's names. Right. God is greater than any one name, and so there are many names that are for God in the Bible, and that's part of the joy of studying the Bible in the Hebrew, is that there's an insight there. That's so much of what I do. I'm the director of education at Israel 365. I'm constantly studying with Christians, right? And it's amazing, right? We have we always say it, no one's changing anybody. We just are studying together, and Christians are thirsty to study the Bible in the original Hebrew. So you have the name of God. We actually don't pronounce that name. It's so holy. But there is, I would call it Hashem. It's not really, that's one of the ways of names of God. There's also Elohim, if you've heard of that name, right? And they mean different things, right? Like do you all know the most famous Jewish prayer from the Bible, right? Shema Yisrael, right? Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one, right? So there's two names of God in that one sentence, right? And they mean different things. One of them, Elohim, refers to God as the God of nature. Right? That everything in nature, all the laws of nature, everything that looks like it's not God, no, it's actually God. All the forces of the world are all God. And that's why it's Elohim, which is in plural. All the plural forces of nature, everything comes back to one source. But then the higher name of God, the one that you have on your shirt, refers to the God who actually communicates with us. The God who gave the Bible to us. The God who spoke to Moses. The God who speaks to us. Right? That's a different aspect of God. It's all one, but that's the God who, not just the God of nature and all the forces of the earth, but the God that actually interacts with us and with whom we build our relationship. And that's something that we all share in common, right? Our personal relationship.
On the back of the Ten Commandments, when Moses brought them back and said it had the testimonies on the back of the stones, what does the rabbis teach in that manner?
So I'm not sure what you're referring to. We may not have the same tradition there, but we have the Ten Commandments that were chiseled in, right, that were carved in. So I'm not sure I don't know of anything secret that was written on the back.
I can elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah.
Whenever it talks about the stone tablets themselves, it says that the testimony of his witness was written on both the front and the back of the stones, not just the one side. That's what he does.
Okay, interesting.
The thoughts on what was written on the stones altogether.
So I don't know of a tradition about what's on the back, but I can say that we have a tradition from the sages that that was carved through the stone. Now some of the letters have like a circle, like with a stone in the middle, and somehow it held in place, right? That was so that's one tradition. Also, if you compare the two accounts of the Ten Commandments, right? One is in Exodus, and then it's recounted again in Deuteronomy.
Yes.
And there's some differences between them. And one of the more amazing differences is when it talks about the Sabbath, Shabbat, right? In one place it says, Zachor et Yom HaShabbat, L'Kodesho, that you should remember Shabbat, right? And in another place, in the other one it says, Shamor, you should guard. Is it remember or is it guard? Which one did God say? God only gave us the 10 Commandments once, but so which word did he say? Is it to guard or to preserve?
Do they by any chance have a similar meaning behind them?
So in our understanding, to remember are all the positive commandments of the Sabbath, all the positive things that we do, right? And to guard and to preserve are all the negative things, meaning the things we don't do on the Sabbath. And our tradition is that that this is something a human being can't do, but only God could say both of those words together at once. And now, because we as human beings can only understand one at a time, so in each place that the 10 Commandments are written, it uses a different word. But in that one time when God actually said it, spoke both words at once. Yeah, spoke both words at once. And to show that both the positive and the negative are both, the prohibitions and the commandments are both essential. And so they come together. And so, and if you want, that's what I write about, talk about in the Shabbat book, about how to create, sometimes by saying no to things is how we create a holy environment, right? By not driving places, by not using my phone, by not, going on, watching TV and, watching a Harrison Ford movie, I can create, I mean, I like Harrison Ford, but I could create like a holy space, right? And so on,
I have one question regarding the commandments that you've got in the books of the Shabbat. Are these commandments that are biblical commandments, or are these commandments that you can find in the Talmud, such as the natural, the spoken Jewish law?
It's a great question. You're touching on a foundational element of Judaism, which is that, our belief is that when God spoke to Moses, right, there was the physical Bible, right, the written Torah, right, those are the 5 books of Moses that was given, but also the oral tradition that comes along with it. And some of those, because you really can't keep the commandments if all you have is what's written in the Bible. It doesn't give you enough detail. It's just not enough. And so we have the ancient traditions that came. But the fact is, most of what the sages tell us, right, what you'll find in all of these teachings of the rabbis and so on, is a close reading and analysis of what's written in the 5 books. So they'll read, the word is written this way and not that way, or uses the same word in this place and that place. And so they're able to piece together based upon the traditions from Moses, and also by using their own minds and a close analysis of the Bible. And so that's why so many of these practices, which a Christian might say, like, I don't know, where does that come from, right? Did you guys just make that up? So no, we didn't just make it up, right? It comes from a close reading of the Bible, and there's a logic to it, and also a tradition as well. And that's why, so when it talks about remember the Sabbath to make it holy, right? That's a verse in Exodus. So I don't know, how do we do that? Right? Well, when the Sabbath begins every Friday night, we have a certain special prayer all about the Sabbath that we do at our table, at our Friday night meal, before we begin eating. And I stand up, right, and I recite this, right, and I remember the Sabbath and I make it holy. Like it's a fulfillment of that verse. So the practices that we have, sometimes some of them are customs and so on, but many of them are really just an interpretation, understanding of what the verses actually mean. So my Christian friends told me that if you're writing this book, you need, for the Christian reader, they need to know as much as possible, like, where does that come from? Like, what verse is that based on, right? So I was trying to be as careful as much as possible. I got my advice from my friends beforehand, to show that where it comes from. But I want to be clear, right? This is not saying that you all have to keep Shabbat this way. This is not what right? That's definitely not what Pastor Todd asked me to speak about. Right? I'm not coming here, not at all. I wrote the book simply as a way, like I said, it was out of a request, really, from my Christian friends. They want to know how we've done it for thousands of years. And I know, and they can take what they want from it or not. And that's it. Like, it's not my job to tell Christians how to be Christians. I feel that very strongly, right? The one exception that I make, because I think it's a corruption that leads to anti-Semitism, is replacement theology, right? But outside of that, would never tell Christians what to do. That's not my job.
With the Jews, do you guys still do the ketubah? And what's the significance of the number 10?
Okay, I don't know, I'm putting the number 10 aside for a moment, so maybe a little too esoteric, but the ketubah is a marriage contract that is thousands of years old. It's actually pretty cool. The protection of women started with the Jews. For thousands of years, you and I cannot get married unless the husband, the young, or whoever's getting married, has this whole long contract that we sign, and it's the same one that we've used for thousands of years, where you sign off on all sorts of things that you have to supply to your wife, right? And you have to take care of your wife. And if you divorce her, you have to pay her X amount of money. Like, can you imagine? Like, for thousands of years we've been doing this. It was only 150 years ago that that women were treated like chattel in England, right? Like in America even, right? But for thousands of years it was built in, right? That we have to sign this contract, and so men could be held accountable that women should not be treated badly in marriage. Yeah.
As a rabbi, what is your interpretation of Psalm 22?
I gotta look at Psalm 22 again. Why? What do you have in mind? What are you thinking specifically about? Why Psalm 22?
It starts out, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? And later on it says, they pierced my hands and my feet.
You want to know something amazing?
What's that?
That the sages say that when Esther, in the story of Purim, in the book of Esther, that when she, had that fateful moment where she had to go to the king and try to and save her people, right? And she went against the king's law, like she could have put her to death for walking in, right? That at that moment, right, she felt like that God left her at that moment, and she recited these words. That this psalm is with the words on her, that she was so terrified, right? These are the words of David, but that Esther was reciting these words that she felt, right? My God, why have you left me? And the sages here, I'm going to read to you the interpretation, right? That David recited this prayer for the future when the people of Israel go into exile. And the very first exile was after the destruction of the first temple and Babylonia, right, and then of course the story of Esther, right, and then so she felt at that moment, right, that God had forsaken us, but then she recovers her faith as she goes through the rest of that incredible story. So, wow, you guys have great questions. So, should we take one more? You want to do? Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Could you tell us a little bit about what Israel is now preparing for the rebuilding of the tabernacle?
Of the temple. Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm glad you mentioned tabernacle, because you guys got to come in Shiloh. Right, the tabernacle, I mean, they have discovered the place where the tabernacle was. It's astounding. It took decades, but they found the place that they're pretty certain where the tabernacle was. So that's incredible. But you're asking about the temple, which is even more important in Jerusalem. And let me tell you, this is like, we think about the temple every day. Right, we pray towards Jerusalem wherever we are in the world, and if you're in Jerusalem, you pray towards the temple, right? Towards where we'll be rebuilt. I will tell you that there is something called the Temple Institute that Pastor Todd and Linda were just playing music from the Temple Institute, where they have actually recreated and have ready many of the vessels for the future temple. What's amazing is that it feels like it's getting closer and closer and more realistic. Pete Hegseth a few years ago was in Jerusalem, and he's like, yeah, of course the Jews should build a temple, right? But that's not a small thing. Meaning, you're talking about the defense secretary, talking in a practical way about the temple. So that we feel that it's coming. The day is coming, we're going to get there. I talk about this more at length in the book, but I believe that we are currently now in a process of redemption. It started 150 years ago, right? And when Zionism began, it began as a political movement, and all the miracles that have happened, and Israel returned physically to the land. And now we're in the stage of Israel returning spiritually to God. It's happening now as we speak, as that's what we were talking about. But we are waiting, right? The next stage will be the stage of the temple, the stage of Solomon, right? Like he built the first temple, we'll build the third temple, and that will be the stage when the whole world comes together in Jerusalem. And we're going to shut down the UN in New York, and we're going to reopen it in a holy way in Jerusalem, which is where it's meant to be, right? That's where all the nations will come together and put down their swords and turn them into plowshares, right? That will happen in Jerusalem, right? Because we'll all be coming together and serving God and praying to God together in Jerusalem. We won't have to fight anymore, right? We'll be able to work out our issues there together at the temple. Amen. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna ask Clyde and Pat if you would help pass the plates right now, and then he's got his books over here. Feel free.
Thank you, everyone. No pressure, but everything you give will help us with our work in bringing Jews and Christians together. That's what it's for. So thank you, everyone.
Israel,